The Sidelying Senergy test is an assessment of isolated movement about the lower extremity. To assess isolated hip flexion, position your patient on their side with their hip, knee, and ankle in extension. Make sure to support the full weight of their leg. Instruct your patient to bend at the hip while keeping the knee and ankle straight. Bend forward. Good. If they are able to move through the entire range of hip flexion without bending at their knee or ankle, the movement is considered selective. If, after moving through 50% of the range, they move into flexion at the knee or the ankle, the movement is considered selective with pattern overlay. If your patient is able to initiate the movement, but before 50% of the motion is completed, moves into knee or ankle flexion, the movement is considered deviating from pattern. If a flexion pattern occurs immediately upon initiation of movement, the movement is considered to be patterned. To assess isolated knee flexion, begin with your patient on their side with the hip, knee, and ankle into extension. Instruct your patient to bend their knee with their heel moving towards their bottom while supporting the weight of your patient's leg. As they move, assess for any flexion occurring at the hip or ankle. To assess isolated ankle flexion, begin with your patient on their side with their hip, knee, and ankle positioned in extension. Instruct your patient to point their toes up, flexing their ankle without bending at their knee or their hip. Good. As they complete this motion, assess for any flexion occurring at the hip or the knee. To assess isolated extension about the hip, start with your patient positioned on their side and place the hip, knee, and ankle into flexion. Instruct your patient to extend at their hip while keeping their knee and ankle bent. During this movement, make sure to assess for any extension occurring at the knee or ankle. To assess isolated knee extension, begin with your patient on their side with the hip, knee, and ankle in flexion. Instruct your patient to straighten their knee while keeping their ankle and hip bent. As they move their knee into extension, assess for any extension occurring at the ankle or the hip joints. To assess isolated ankle extension, position your patient on their side with their hip, knee, and ankle flex. Instruct the patient to point their toes down. As they extend their ankle, feel for any extension occurring at the knee or the hip.